We're live. Welcome, everybody. My dog is in here. We're all in here. Today, we are featuring Keith Crowder. He's going to be talking about how to stop living in fear and how to flip it. Who is ready? There's so many things to talk about when it comes to fear. So welcome. Today, we're doing the root chakra. So we are talking about overcoming these obstacles and fears. So let's wait until a couple people come on board. But yeah, do you want to share your fears before coming on live?
So what do you do when you have fear about going live to talk about fear? Oh my God. So this is like the second or third time I've done this. Yes. And it's hilarious because she's a pro, but she didn't used to be a pro, which I think her story is kind of a real life example of what we're talking about and the illusion that fear, for the most part, really is. So if you're cool with it, let's tell your story about videoing. And
I mean, I think most people know, but maybe they don't. There's a lot of new people. Yeah. So I have had a big fear of speaking, I guess, live, not in public, not in front of people, but live, talking to the little hole in the camera. And so the computer hole is what I call it. And so for a long time, I had this big fear of, doing videos, going on YouTube, etc. And it wasn't until last September or October when I started this group that I was like, F it, let's face our fear and rise, not run from it. So I started doing these lives weekly. And no matter how scared I was, I remember some of you that have been here since the beginning, you remember all the times I'm like, oh my God, I'm hitting live. And then I had to just overcome it. I did a program with a speaking coach, and it helped me get through a lot of things. And here we are. So I'm very used to it now, but it's always scary to go live. So I totally get it.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're having the pregame, right? And, she's casual. She's on her phone doing things, whatever, no big deal. I'm like walking in circles, just playing things over in my mind. I'm like, you good? She's like, oh, yeah, I'm good. I'm like,
because I know this is going to flow however it needs to go. And just, we didn't recite it. It's just what we know, what we talk about. So let's get to it. Hey, everyone. Ramon, Tanya, Michelle. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Do you want to talk about, what is fear? What is fear to you? And what are some things that we can help them see fear in a different light?
Yeah, and I think that under the best place to start, I think, is understanding what fear is, right? And understanding there's three main sources of fear, right? The first is abandonment and rejection. The second is trust, and that could be trust in yourself or trust in other people. And then you've also got self-worth, right? So pretty much any situation that you're in that's fear-based, it's going to fall in one of those three categories, right? So again, abandonment, rejection, trust, and then self-worth. So just to kind of go through and maybe give some examples, abandonment and rejection. What's a good example of that fear? It could be fear of a divorce, fear of being by yourself at Applebee's, right? That's a couples retreat quote. Check that movie out if you haven't seen it.
We quote it all the time.
All the time.
When we were going through a lot of our ups and downs and our separations and whatever, a lot of it was coming, a lot of it was coming from the fear of abandonment. I didn't want to feel abandonment, and, reflecting back on it, because you do have to reflect on your fears.
Michelle, couples retreat.
Yeah. Reflecting on the fears, I realized, okay, these fears are stemming from my childhood because, I was raised with a single mom, and my dad had left they got divorced when I was 3. And so, but he was just never there. So that whole abandonment was the root of these feelings that I had to then deal with as we were dealing with things. So it's kind of like you deal with these issues so that they rise and you can see where the root of it is. Where is it stemming from? And is it an illusion, or is it something that is truly something to be fearful of? Is it a true fear, or is it an illusion?
Right. Yeah. And I think just to kind of to shed some light is that when we're talking about fear, you have to understand it's coming from sort of an underlying premise or rule that you create 100% of your reality, 100% of the time, no matter what. So kind of dovetailing off that example, if I'm acting in a state, because it was the same thing for me, the same issues she had, I had, as far as abandonment and rejection. And when you're in that fear of abandonment and rejection, it compounds it, right? It brings itself and manifests itself in your reality, right? Which is exactly sort of kind of what happened to us until we started kind of taking personal responsibility for that. Right. Through growth and through, some of the things we'll talk about later on, which is, how to flip it. So that's a good example of abandonment and rejection. The next is trust. This one can kind of go any weird, different kind of way you want to put it. But, fear, like if somebody has a gun in my face, right? And we've taken Krav Maga classes, and they teach you how to disarm someone, right? So if I'm fearful of that situation, if I've had the proper training, the proper practice, I believe in myself enough to where I know I can handle myself in any given situation, that's a form of trust, right? That then will diminish your fear. If you've ever been in a fight, if you've taken a couple punches, it's not that big of a deal. You're not scared of it. But if you've never been punched in the mouth, that's very scary because you just simply haven't experienced it or practiced it. And that's a part of trust.
It's the fear of the unknown. When you don't, how many times have you heard someone saying something out of, coming from a place of fear, like, what if this, or what if that happens, or what if, right? When the chances of that what if happening are usually like it's like a lightning bolt, right? But because we're so stuck in our left brain and we're so stuck in the overthinking, we think our way towards fear. We then become, so what did you say? It's so narrow-minded. So like,
right. Yeah. So when you're,
say what I'm trying to say.
Like Joanna's a good example. She's very, she doesn't really worry about things a lot. In other words, she just has an innate trust that things will, come together as they should. Meanwhile, I'm over here in my left brain. I always get those confused. I'm in my left brain trying to figure out the path. And if we do this, it'll do this and this and this and this and
it's going to change anyway.
Right. And right. And so what she's experiencing is a connection to God in a moment, right? It's a trust that I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm following my path, where I'm over here trying to do it myself and not trusting in God, not being connected with God. And that just creates a disconnection that creates my own reality based out of fear-based and control thinking, if that makes sense. So, that's trust. But trust is, what's another example of trust? Not where you're in a life-threatening situation. It's another good example.
What do you mean? Like,
if you guys have an example, type it up.
Yeah, give us some examples of trust, that maybe trust of yourself, trust of you don't trust the universe or God. I don't know. There's so many different examples of just having that innate. It's more than just faith. It's like a knowing. It has to be a knowing. It's a knowing of you're being taken care of, or that whatever's happening, if you come to a place where there's fear, maybe that fear is there for a reason to teach you something, or for you to turn and flip things around. So, it just depends, right? What are some things that, some choices that people can make to flip it around? Or do you want to talk about that afterwards? I grew up being told the what ifs. Yup. Trust, believe, perhaps.
Yeah. So then the third one, just again, abandonment, rejection, number one, trust, number two, and then number three, self-worth. And we probably all have self-worth issues in some way, shape, or form, right? So maybe a self-worth example. Well, let's use me as an example. Well, both of us. So she's overcome her self-worth, right? Like that was an issue that you had in terms of presenting.
Right.
Now, are you scared? Are you fearful of anything in terms of getting on camera? No issues whatsoever. Meanwhile, I'm pacing, right? Like sweating, drinking, thinking, am I going to mess up? How are people going to receive what I'm saying? Am I going to say the right thing at the right time? That's all self-worth. And it's a little bit of trust too, because I don't trust that, I'm going to be the best version of me in this moment, but it's mostly self-worth that leads me down that path of thinking about all the things that can go wrong, which it's all irrelevant.
It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time to be going down a path of thinking the what ifs. And you know what? I love the analogy that you've given before when we did that workshop, the chakra workshop at the mountains, or retreat, I should say. Remember when you were talking about getting in the car and driving to the other side of the country and just being in the car and all the what ifs that could happen on the way there? Like, are you going to sit in the car and not drive because this might happen 5 feet from here or 20 miles from here or whatever, Right.
So, one of our sort of goals is to take a road trip. All the way across the United States and back. And if anyone's taking a long road trip, we've done them out 15 times, millions of times, I don't know.
More
Anyway, so when you plan your road trip, what do you do when you plan it? You don't plan based on fear. Oh, I may get a flat tire in Asheville, and then when I'm going to Oklahoma City, my radiator may bust. I may run out of money. You don't think in those terms, right? You simply plan and prepare, and you enjoy the trip. You enjoy the process. Where if you did that based in fear, you'd never make it into your car, because there's a million things that can happen to you if you're driving 1,500 miles, but you don't focus on that. You focus on the environment, the trees around
you. Would you be focused on there might be a pothole that's going to bust my tire, so therefore I'm not going to go? No, you're going to prepare and watch out and be alert and prepare for a pothole so that you can prevent it. But that's not going to stop you from going. So it's all about taking action.
And it's such a good example because, if you've taken a road trip, you're in the now. You're in the now of the kids asking, are we there yet? You're in the now of low on gas. You're in the now of that beautiful sunset, as you're driving across Wyoming. Yes. All those things, you're in the now. And simply when problems arise, you handle it. Sometimes with grace, sometimes with not. But, you don't think about all that most of the time when you're driving. You're just excited for the trip. And yeah, that's a really good example of how to handle fear.
Right. Because is it something that needs immediate action? Is a lion coming at you right now? What do you need to do at the moment? You need to take action, right? You got to run, or you're going to stay still. Same thing with everything else. So also it's about looking at it, whatever's the unknown that we fear, why not shed some light on it, educate yourself, so that you're not in fear of the what if. Educate, because once knowledge is power, and you can use that power to overcome your fear, to go within and find that light that's basically be still, everything's okay, be in the now, life is eternal, etc. And so that calms your nerves. It calms the fear little voices in our heads that are constantly talking, which is what? Our ego.
Right. Yeah, and too, when you think about gurus that sit there and nothing bothers them, they're just like Lucy, the movie Lucy. That's a really good example. If you've seen that movie, by the end when she's getting the blue stuff in her veins, she's not scared of anything. She feels no pain. She's just simply above it all. But it goes back to, if you think about it, if you can conquer abandonment and rejection, if you can conquer trust, if you can conquer self-worth, if you know how to persevere through those emotions as they happen, what does that do to your level of fear? It diminishes it to almost zero. So what happens when your fear is zero? You're in the now. Mm-hmm. You're trusting. You're following your path. You're making a decision based on, what you're meant to do, not because you're trying to avoid something that may happen. Right. And so I think it's important to understand that to get a good hold of fear, we've got to meditate. And this is a connective thing for me. So I've resisted meditation from the jump. I'm in my mind all the time. I think thoughts all the time. If you want me to sit there and think no thought, you are out your mind. At least that was my initial sort of feeling. Right. And over time, this helped connected me, because if I can sit with no thought, that means what? I control my thoughts. And if I control my thoughts, I can control my reality and how I respond to things, right? And so that's what I'm like, okay, I'm down with that. If I can meditate and get control of my emotions and control of my thoughts and start to look above them, yeah, sign me up. I'm good.
Think about it. Our fear is not coming from our emotions. Our fear is stemming from our mind, from our thoughts. Sometimes we think something a lot, and therefore we all of a sudden we're feeling some way, and we don't know why we're feeling this way. And then we look back at all the 60,000 thoughts we had that day and go, oh, I was thinking about this. So the thoughts create the emotion. The emotion is there to alert you whether you are in alignment or out of alignment. The more you are sad, worried, in fear, etc., the more lower in the vibration you are in the scale of frequency. And therefore you can't really see clearly. You can't see clearly at all because you're at the bottom. You're at the basement of the building versus going up, going within yourself, into what we call the penthouse of yourself, where from there you have a very good view of what the reality is and you're in alignment. And the only way to get there is through being still, through meditation, and just shedding light.
Yes. And so, that kind of leads us, I guess, to the next step is, understanding where fear comes from, again, abandonment, rejection, trust. self-worth is essentially where it's coming from. And then you start to dig into each one of those, you're much more equipped to just handle the emotion of fear. Right. But I think another sort of, at least in today's world, I think for the most part, and these aren't life-threatening fears, these are like money fears, relationship fears, the fears that really drive our thoughts and how we feel about things, is that, a lot of times the self-reflection and understanding that every choice you've made and you're 100% responsible for your reality, that's a hard pill to swallow, right? Like if I'm not in connection with myself and I'm filing for bankruptcy as an example, or I'm in a money situation, you're 100% responsible for getting there. And being able to say that and accept that, suddenly then it's not what am I going to do, right? Because help me out here. You've gotten to that point probably because of a lack of awareness. And this isn't always the case, right? This is just a specific example. But there's a lack of awareness with money and your relationship with money that's led you to creating a reality where you are forced to fix this money situation. And
same thing with health.
Yeah, health. Yeah, COVID. Oh God. Again, so when you can accept that responsibility, it's amazing how the fear then diminishes because you feel in control. Right. And you're able to make better decisions. And, that I think that's, again, a big part of sort of the modern day fears is just that we create it by every choice that we've made throughout our entire life. Right.
So what do? You start making better choices, because anything you do from here on out is going to change your future. It's going to change the trajectory of where you're going. And if you realize, because of whatever reason, because of fear, because of anything, you realize, you come to that self-reflection and you go, okay, this isn't working for me anymore. And it's making me realize that it's going to take me down a path I don't want to go. So I have to make some changes. And that's when you take action. You take action to make changes so that you are at a place where you're no longer in fear mode. You are in love mode. You are loving your life and you are loving everything about it. And there's nothing to fear. And I think a lot of it comes to, like, if you really think about the depthness of it, I think at the end of those three fears, there's the fear of death. And a lot of it is because of not understanding the other side, right? It's because we're just here in this physical realm, not understanding the non-physical, and therefore we're fearing it. It's the unknown. And so we don't want to die.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point about programming, right? Because, we've all been programmed from birth, right? I mean, I grew up in a Pentecostal, both my grandparents were Pentecostal preachers for their entire lives, right? And so, the death and hell was programmed in us, most of us, for a long time. So is that real? I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, we personally don't think that's true, but that's a different subject. But because I've educated myself as an adult and I've gathered all the facts, right? I've made assessments. I've done all the things that I need to do to address that fear. I mean, am I afraid of the process of death? Yes. Like, am I going to die by, slow death? Am I going to die like while I sleep? If I had a choice, I would be less afraid of it. But death itself, I'm not afraid of, because
once it happens, it's like, oh, it's time. Okay. It's like a dream. I mean, how many of you have had a dream where you're about to die and you realize, oh, this is it? Because I've had several of those. And it's like that thing where you just feel it at the pit of your stomach, like your heart's dropping. You're like, this is it. But then what happens? And then you're done. You wake up. And so I feel like it's that same type of feeling, just, waking up in a different realm, because our spirit moves on. It's our body that just dies.
Right. And so, like, now that we've kind of talked about where fear comes from, how to define them, how to spot them, it kind of goes into the next part, of the last part, is how do we flip it, right? Like, how do we take responsibility for those fears? And we've talked a little bit about that. But I think the biggest thing is that understanding that fear truly is an illusion, right? It's for the most part, right? Like non-dangerous situations, like that fear, that rabbit hole that we're going down in thought is an illusion, right? It's so we have to be able to stop. And just like all emotions, fear is an emotion that is telling you that you need to address something within yourself.
Yes.
Right. So, and that,
write that down. That was a good one.
So how do we do that? We meditate, we think about it, we pray on it, whatever you want to call it, we do that. We spend some time within ourselves, and then we can then decide how we want to move forward. Right. So for example, I mean, if I see a man approaching me with a gun, do I run? Do I attack him? I'm probably going to run. I'm not worried about I'm going to make a decision, right? In the moment that fear comes, and I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to move forward, right? So in a similar situation, once we shed light on it, once we think about that emotion that we're feeling, and it helps me to kind of talk about an example. So let's just talk about, what's a good example?
What, for fear of life?
Yeah, no, just fear in general, and kind of like, so let's go through the process of, I have a fear, I feel it, and then how do I?
Well, let's just use an example of ours, like
okay,
fear of we've had tons of fears when it had to, like divorce, when we got divorced.
Right. So, let's just say fear of infidelity. Let's go with that one. That's a big one, right? So I'm scared my partner is, cheating on me, having a conversation with another person, whatever it is. Now, I was about to get deep. So, when that happens and that fear hits you and you're scared, stop again, take a second. Why am I feeling this? Right? Again, it's either abandonment, rejection, trust, self-worth, or maybe all three. And in this case, it's all three. Right. And so as an adult, what do? I address each one. I think about it. I take responsibility for every decision that got me to the point to where I am seriously scared my wife is talking to another person or interested in another person sexually or whatever. Right. So in doing so, what do you think is going to happen to your relationship? And this is the thought process that you have. You take responsibility. You then go, what am I going to do to fix this? And that's not you're not going to fix your relationship in that moment.
Nope.
But you can take a step towards fixing yourself, which then fixes your relationship.
Yep.
Right. So
what? It's 100%. I'm like, yes, because that's exactly what we've done.
Right. And so when two people, in a marriage situation or partner or whatever, have an issue, if both people are attacking their abandonment, rejection, trust, self-worth issues, eventually they're going to see things on the same page, and the respect will regenerate, right? The love will start to come back, the newness, the partnership. Anyway, you know
the stuff that brought us together in the first place.
The stuff that made you love that person, because you're now taking responsibility for that fear. It's going to again manifest itself in your life, right? Like again, in our situation, she was like, in love, whatever, I don't know, with another male. And that was the hardest thing in the world for me to deal with. And I was scared shitless. But ultimately, I took responsibility for that, right? For everything that I did to get to that moment, because that's all I can control, right? And I went through that. And yes, I was scared day in and day out, but I also felt better because and number one, I was improving myself, right? And I knew that if we weren't going to work out, whoever I was lucky enough to spend my life with and with the next person, they were going to get a better version of me. And that made it worth it still.
And I did not like that. I was like, no, somebody else is not going to get a better version of you after I've been with you all this time and shaped you into who you are right now. No, which then brought me back towards him.
Right. So, you take the responsibility. I forgot what I was going to
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
And this is all like, I know right now you're just painting the picture of me doing this, but it all stemmed from you doing it first. But.
Yeah, no, this is totally, it's mutual across all levels.
Thank you.
Yeah. So to get back into it, I made the decision. I knew I was going to be a better person, period. Right. So again, you're not fixated. I think we talked about having horse blinders on. When you're fearful, a lot of times you concentrate on one outcome or maybe two outcomes, but they're really shitty outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to open up those blinders, which open up the field of possibilities. Right. And then, as you do that, that gives you the strength to move through the action, to get past the fear. And, that's how you flip it. Right. I mean, you're going to still feel the fear, but that will diminish as you practice. Again, getting punched in the face. You get punched in the face once, it's like, that wasn't so bad, but I don't really want to get punched in the face again. You've been punched in the face 10 times.
You'd be like, bring it.
Yeah, whatever, hit me. I'm not, it's no big deal. And so, that's, I think, just a really good way to follow the process of how to overcome fear. And it's not a in the moment thing, like she's scared of cats, right? Was scared of cats, and being in a room with a cat, she could not function. Right. So, she was in a room with a cat and she dealt with it and she moved forward eventually till she got to the point where she held the cat. And it's a process.
Yeah.
But, concentrating on yourself, staying within, taking responsibility for all the three reasons, moving forward, understanding that each choice that you make, as long as it's for betterment of self, most likely you're going to end out on top when it comes to facing and conquering a fear, no matter what it is.
Yeah, and like you said, things might take a really long time. I mean, let's take it back. Let's go shine some light on you. Yeah. Oops.
Ask for it.
Right. Yeah, you did. So when sorry. When back in the day, let's go with infidelity, when that was the case, because we've been together since I was 16, really long time. So, things happen.
97.
But I remember that fear of, oh my God, is this going to happen again? Am I going to be able to take it? Can I continue to forgive? At what point is enough, right? All these fears of starting over, right? Having to heal from everything. All of these fears were still in the back of my mind for how many years? I feel like a lot of things, it took time to get to the point of trusting again. I know I had trust issues because of that. And then it wasn't until I was faced with the same situation that I was able to see from, the other side of the coin. I was able to understand where he was coming from. And therefore I was able to forgive him for what he had done in the past a little bit better, because now I was seeing it from the other side. I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like. I totally feel for you. I understand. There's compassion in that, because instead of sitting there pointing the finger and going, look what you did and how you made me feel, I now went through that and was like, oh, I see what that's like. So I'm sorry for how it makes you feel. And then we're both on the same page. How do we get over this? How many years have to go by for us to really feel like we're 100% trusting of each other? And that takes actually years. At least for us, it took years to get over that hurdle. And that's because fear kept I can't even say it right. It took a hold of us, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever. So that's that.
She did well. Thank you. You're so gracious.
Yeah, I didn't get you that bad.
Not too bad.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, again, with the fear, in terms of flipping it, shed the light on it, gather the facts, right? The facts meaning, what can you control and what can't you control? Let go of what you cannot control and absolutely control what you can control with passion, right? Make an assessment. Is this the best choice for me now? In terms of being stuck in fear, do I move forward this way? Do I move forward that way based on the facts that you've gathered, right? And then act on it, right? Act on the decision and do it and trust and have faith, right? And that process gets easier the more that you do it. And I think what's funny is that I'm by no means an enlightened individual. Got a little bit of enlightenment, but not a lot. But it's funny because as you
become enlightened,
yeah, and you release some of your fears, new ones show up, right? They're like buried underneath some stuff, right?
Yeah, they're suppressed ones. So they're like deeper ones.
Yeah, right. It's like, so frustrating.
Where did this come from?
Frustrating, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It's like finding that T-shirt after you do your laundry that was under your bed for 5 years, because you clean up all the other stuff and you release all these other fears, and then new fears come in. And to me, it's fascinating because. Yes, Heather. To me, it's fascinating because what she said.
She said, I'm sorry, go on.
No, you're good. So, finding that shirt, and where was I?
And finding it and then realizing that it was there because you couldn't see it before.
Right. So, I think that's important because it's the knowing of, and I struggle with this, is that conquering one fear, you're just going to run into another one and another one, but you're climbing,
it gets easier it gets easier to handle as right. And then it's like fearless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can't wait for that.
Freedom. All right, guys. Does anybody have any questions? I love the comments. You guys are awesome. Yes, you're very welcome with us being vulnerable. And I feel that that's because after going through so much that we went through, we feel like we went through it for a reason, and we went through it so that we can shine some light on and help others go through this and show that there is a way, that it is possible, because sometimes people quit too fast because it's not working, and it's really because they're not working on themselves, and they carry that pain and they carry that hurt with them, and then they still have to do the healing even with somebody else. So why not just heal and then look back?
And about vulnerability, I mean, this be vulnerable, people. Like, please
be real.
and why is it important to be vulnerable? Because whoever you're being vulnerable with, that may be exactly what they needed to hear, right? Maybe they just needed to understand that someone else was going through the same thing that they were going through. And there's power in that, right?
Yeah.
As people, we connect, so be vulnerable. I mean, I have no problems. Neither of us, I don't think you do. I know you don't. We have no issues. I'll talk about anything we've been through as a couple, because damn, if it helps anybody get through it, and 10 years from now, they look back and they say it was because that man was vulnerable that I was able to, hold on. We've been there, right?
You always get so emotional, and then you make me emotional.
Anyway, be vulnerable, please. Somebody needs it.
All right, guys. So yes, thank you so much for being here and doing this live. It's so great to hear the other side of me, my other half. What is he? Because I am who I am because of him, and he is who he is because of me. And so it's good to hear the other side of things and see how it all blends together. Next Monday, we are starting the Dimensions workshop, and it goes through the 30th, May 30th. So make sure you register. For those of you who have registered, but you haven't checked your email for the confirmation, please do. I don't want you to miss out on the handbook that we're going to send out this weekend. And we're going to have tons of meditation throughout the entire workshop every single day. So it'll help us with our frequency, help us elevate, help us get into that elevator to reach that penthouse level. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And then the week after that, we will be talking about sex, baby. So that will be so much fun. All right, guys, anything else you want to say? Or are you good?
Oh, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you so much. See you. Peace.